Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Glad you could join me. We've got a great show in store for you today. Learn a little bit about dog food and the dog food industry. Yeah, you know it's complicated. So Carl Gunzer will join us later in the podcast. He's from Purina. Dog man, trainer, hunter, as well as I'll just call him a dog food expert. So looking forward to that. And then how about on the bird hunting gear and the dog training gear side? Terry Wilson will join us from Ugly Dog Hunting Company. We'll learn what's new in that industry and maybe a few bits of advice on Terry's extensive ruffed grouse hunting experience. So stick around for that. We've got a lot more in store for you. Beyond that, our social media focus is all about whether you shoot a limit or not. You know, that's one of the discussions we had recently, and I was frankly a little bit surprised at the answers, and I think you will be as well. And then we're going down to Nevada in our road trip, our public access tips, so stick around. What you been up to? Well, it looks like training is the high point of the day for everybody. Had a good chat around last night at our NAVDA chapter banquet. Good to see everybody. You know, we've trained together, we've had some events together, but thanks to the good old COVID pandemic, we haven't had a banquet for a while. So congratulations, Tiffany, and all the other officers who put that together. I know it's not easy and had a great time there. Interesting to see some folks I haven't seen in a long time. We're all going a little bit more gray, but, you know, this is a chapter made up of chucker hunters. So nobody's putting on the pounds that you might think they would as they're putting on the years. There's another argument for going hunting right there. Talked a lot about my television show, so just to answer all those questions, yes, we're on the air. It's a network called Outdoor America. Now, you may not know it from that. Check your local listings. We're on 110 local television stations around the country, and then streaming on Samsung smart TVs and a whole bunch of other smart TVs as well. So keep your eyes peeled for Wing Shooting USA there and on 7 regional sports networks. Thanks for watching, and please feel free to give some feedback to your station once you do watch it. If you like the show, that is. And if you do like this show, it's made possible thanks to the generous contributions, well, the investment, I like to think, by RuffLand Performance Kennels, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Thank you again, Dave and Vandy and Chris Greenwood, for your hospitality last week. The Ringneck Nation of Huron, South Dakota. It's all made possible thanks to those kind contributors. Well, you love them and you hate them. The Bureau of Land Management is one of those, well, they used to call them the government's caretaker. They would basically get all the defaulted homesteads and the land that nobody else wanted when a territory became a state. So they've got a big challenge ahead of them. A lot of that stuff is, less than ideal for much of anything. That's why the homesteaders failed. But their loss is our gain. BLM administers a whole bunch of great hunting territory. In quail habitat, one of my favorite places, Nevada. Check out the tracts near Tombstone if you're looking for scalies and gambles, say late in the season when it's cold everywhere else. And then the shoreline at Lake Havasu, also a prime gambles hangout. Just get the paper map or even online, find the big yellow blotches on your map and have at them. Be safe. Enjoy yourself. In this part of the podcast is brought to you by MidValleyClays.com. As you know from last week's podcast, there's also instruction and a whole bunch of great guns. If you're looking for an autoloader, like my buddy Tom, who took a lesson while we were out there, they have them, an incredible selection, an incredible gun room. So take a look at what they've got when you can't find it anywhere else. If you're looking for a Browning, and you should, take a look at the new Maxus 2 line. If you would like a lighter weight gun, real easy to load and unload, it's very reliable. The stock is adjustable. The Browning Maxxis 2 line is available at midvalleyclays.com. You know, quite often, if you can't find it anywhere else, it might be sitting in the gun room at midvalleyclays.com, or if not, they can probably find it when nobody else can. Get all the details and browse their selection, including the Browning Maxxis 2 line, at midvalleyclays.com. And I hope to see you soon in my favorite place, Huron, South Dakota, the Ringneck Nation. For more information and a free information package, hard copies of all this stuff, just in case. I love having mine handy in the truck. Go to hunthuronsd.com. In addition to the Ringneck Festival and Bird Dog Challenge a little bit later in the season, there's 124,000 acres of public access that I'll be taking advantage of with some of you in our FurFeathersFriends gathering coming up in late October. All the information is free. Just go to hunthuronsd.com and scroll down, click on that box and fill it in, and you will get all of that information in a timely manner so that you can come to Huron as well. Usually I see him at something like a NAVDA conference or a Pheasants Forever event. Terry Wilson is the founder of Ugly Dog Hunting Company. Yeah, we're going to start with that part of it, but a good friend of mine, we've worked together on several television projects over the years, a very strong NAVDA supporter. Terry Wilson from somewhere up there in the Northeast Kingdom, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Hi, Scott. Good morning.
It is, and we're getting closer and closer to rough grouse season. How's the population looking up there?
Well, it's a little down this year. Woodcock should be fine, but it depends on where you are. I mean, we're in Maine. There are good pockets of birds up there. Northern Vermont, where we are in the Champlain Valley, it's okay, but we only have just a little less than 2 months to grouse season. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point. Is this your personal observations and your friends, or does somebody actually do something to count birds out your way?
We don't, as far as I know, we don't do active drummer counts anymore.
Yeah.
But these are just personal observations.
Sounds like you got the field testing crew in the background there.
Yeah, that's River.
Oh, love it. So let's jump to that stuff, because I've met many of your dogs over the years, and if anybody watches the Wing Shooting USA TV show, they've seen many of your dogs, and Nancy, your wife's dogs as well. What's the latest dog inventory at Ugly Dog Hunting Company these days?
Well, currently right now we have River. She's the youngest. She's 3 years old. I have Rudder. She's another ugly dog, and she's 11. And we have Prairie. I don't know if you ever met Prairie.
Nope.
And that's Nancy's dog. She's 5. And then we have the old Scratch. He's pushing 13, so he's still trucking along.
Wow.
So that's the inventory right now.
That's I'm so glad to hear that. Scratch, of course, has a soft spot in my heart for a whole bunch of reasons. I've written about him for Outdoor Life magazine and a few other places he's ended up as well, and hunted with him after some incredible recoveries. Won't bore anybody with the details, but somewhere on my website, I think you can read some of that. There's a lot of places to buy gear for bird hunting and bird dogs, and you decided to get into that business. But let's start before that. Give me a little bit of your background, and then how you ended up with the Ugly Dog Hunting Company.
Well, I can give you you want the short end of it?
Yeah, I'm not writing your biography.
Yes, please. Well, it's really short. Before I got into NAVDA and things like that, I had another business, and which I sold, and I think I was 50 years old, and I said to Nancy, "So I'm going to retire, And she says, no, you're not. And so at that time, we were building our house in the middle of some great grouse cover in Vermont. So I figured I'd take a year off and build the house, help build the house. Well, anyway, when that ended, she said, you've got to find something to do. Well, about that time, I had purchased from a knob to breeder scrub. He is you still see he's on the logo. So he was the official sports person. And, we started calling him Ugly Dog. And so one night we were sitting around and having an adult beverage, and this idea came up that we'd started a small wing shooting upland hunting company, and we'd name it Ugly Dog, with the hope of creating a niche. So it really started out to be a hobby. Yeah. And the way I operate, things started out to be a hobby, but then I jump into it all fours and off we go. So here we are roughly 21 years later, and so we're solidly entrenched in the wing shooting business. Although we don't get much into waterfowl, it's primarily upland.
Yeah, but you're a prime example. A lot of versatile dog owners will shoot a duck or a goose every once in a while, or a snipe. I was talking with somebody about snipe and rail hunting yesterday. So you do that as well, don't you?
I do a lot of waterfowl hunting. Yes, that's true. A lot of the waterfowl hunting is done on our Lake Champlain here, and we generally hunt later season. That's when we separate the men from the boys.
Oh, yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart, late season hunting on Lake Champlain. So we're usually hunting the golden eyes or whistlers, if you'd call them that. Yeah. And, late season mallards and blacks. But, yeah, we do quite a bit of wing shooting on the lake. And we generally hunt out of boats, which are the floating blinds, and we're hunting on the big waters of Lake Champlain. And but with the versatile dogs, they've shown they're great out there. I mean, they've never skipped a beat. I think you hunted with Tank before. He's gone now, but he was an incredible waterfowl hunter. In fact, I think he'd rather do that than upland hunt. And we have the new one coming along, River. She'd rather waterfowl hunt herself. So it's kind of being passed on. But of course, we do a lot of upland hunting too.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I have a feeling your physical location has a lot to do with what you really like to do out there. If your feet are dry when you're hunting, what are you chasing?
That could be grouse. Or they may not be dry either.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I am generalizing, I live in the desert, though, so that's...
Yeah, well, we run into that. We generally, if the feet are dry or semi-dry, we're hunting grouse or woodcock. I personally like the woodcock. It's a lot more fun. You tend to get more bird contacts that way with dogs. Yeah. And particularly if you get into flights. And in Vermont, we get the flights, and when they come in, it's a great time. You go out and have a lot of bird contacts. Not necessarily killing all the birds, but it's great dog work. So, yeah, and then we do a fair amount of traveling too. I have been known to chase the roosters out in South Dakota, and also, we do a fair amount of hunting down in Georgia, which you've been on a couple of trips with. Right. So, yeah.
Always.
Go ahead.
Well, always a good time, but in particular, the grouse thing. I remember you one day called and said you should do a grouse show, and I agonized over that for years. I'd seen other people try to do it, and they couldn't do a very good job of it, and for the obvious reasons. There's no blue sky to show a bird against, and the camera guys freak out. But you finally convinced me. Or I convinced myself, maybe both. You're a pretty good lobbyist to call it a woodcock show instead. And we ended up shooting grouse and had a wonderful time. And we supported the Rough Grouse Society at the same time. And it was wonderful. But you mentioned again just now timber doodles as being your favorite of the two out there. What is it about them that puts them higher on the list than rough grouse?
Well, I would say one thing is that particularly if you have a younger dog, they hold very well for a young dog.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you can get more than one shooting opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, if you get into flight birds, they don't fly long distances. But if you get into when you hunt the local birds, they will take off and fly a good long ways. But when you get into flight birds, they may only fly 50, 60 yards. So, in essence, it's good hunting, but it's also great dog training, too, because particularly with young dogs. And so although I've noticed, this may be crazy, but me and my diehard woodcock hunters have noticed over the last 20 years, as crazy it may seem, that woodcock now are running. And I think maybe there's some genetics going on here, because the old times you never saw woodcock run. They stayed put, and that was it. But now a lot of times they'll run, and I've seen my dogs have to relocate on a woodcock 4 or 5 times before we can pin them down. So it's kind of interesting.
It is.
But it's just it is a challenge. I mean, basically, woodcocks only fly as high as their cover.
Oh.
So you may have a split second to shoot at one, and that's it. So.
Yeah, and we'll talk about my trophy alder branches in a minute. Speaking of that, but immortalized on television too. But that idea of a bird adjusting to the pressure by learning to run instead of fly is what a lot of old timers will tell you about pheasants in the Midwest. Have you ever heard that?
No, I have not. But so they're saying they're running more now?
We shot all the birds who fly, and so the ones who reproduce are the ones who run and live to tell about it.
Yeah, believe me, I know.
But before you got into versatile dogs, you were into some other breeds, weren't you?
Yes, I hunted with labs and chessies.
Yeah.
And but again, before I got into the serious upland, typically I was more of a waterfowl hunter, and upland hunting was kind of like, hey, I'm bored today, let's take the lab out or the chessie out and see if we can run up a grouse or two or find a woodcock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was actually, ironically, it was my wife that really got me into the pointing dogs and the versatile dogs, if you can believe it.
Well, just the polar opposite of around here at our house, but that's a story for the back page of Gundog magazine, I think next month, now that I think about it. So watch for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So think back, Terry, you've had some incredible hunts over the years. I've been able to share some of them with you, and they've all been wonderful. Tell me about one of your favorite hunts of the last few years.
Are you talking about a hunt or a memorable moment?
I guess that would make a hunt, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Oh, okay. This is one that I'd like to share with the listeners. A few years back, I had a serious injury to my leg, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it was long coming back. It was a very serious injury, required major surgery, etc.
Yeah.
I won't go into the details. But anyway, making a long story short, it was grouse and woodcock season, and I could barely walk. So Nancy said, well, let's do something. Let's see if we can get you out there and hunt. So we took my young dog, River, and we rode up to a cover in the back piece of our property. And we got out, and I was able to hobble around. I had the shotgun, and I was hobbling around. Not getting around very well, I might add. So my wife was carrying a shotgun. She was backing me up. And River went on point, okay, and the bird came up, and Nancy shot it. Probably sailed maybe 150 yards before it went down. Sent River, and she picked it up. And that's probably one of my most memorable hunts. I was able to get back out and do it again and have a young dog do that kind of work. But, there have been a lot of other memorable hunts, too. But that's just one.
And I can relate to that one only in that I remember having some work done as well and being able to finally walk through in my case, it was a field in South Dakota for the first time in a long dang time. So I'm glad you had a lovely wife along with you and a great dog as well. Wish I was there for it, but we've shared some good times. We did that rough grouse, the national hunt up in I always confuse. Is that a Great Falls in Minnesota as well?
No, Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids, yeah. Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Wonderful hunt there. Learned all about ticks while I was up there.
I'll bet you did.
And then down south in some of those places we've been to. And then, of course, you know, you've been active in so many groups, from the Rough Grouse Society to NAVDA and who knows what else. But you made it possible for us to come to the NAVDA Invitational Test a few years back, which is still the most popular television show I've ever produced. And thank you. And I think everybody in NAVDA needs to thank you for the incredible job you did making that available to people who maybe have never heard of the organization before. So keep up the good work. But you've got some other good works going as well. Tell me a little bit about your track chair effort.
Track to wing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has actually started in the beginning of the pandemic, and we were just looking to help people out. And one of our big things was, you know, I realized there are a lot of people out there that had, you know, mobility issues, and you know, they lost their ability to get out and hunt, train dogs, fish, waterfowl hunt, whatever. They just lost that ability because it was just such a horrible thing to get out there. I mean, people would have to literally carry people out or push a wheelchair through the mud and whatnot. And then a couple of years prior to that, I'd been at the SHOT Show, and I'd looked at the company out there that was producing them, I was just amazed by this machine. It was basically a 400-pound tank.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
And where it could go and how maneuverable it was, and we got to thinking, you know, let's see if we can do something with this. Let's see, because they know there was a lot of other groups out there that do work for veterans, but a lot of people were excluded because they were not veterans. And although we don't exclude anybody, regardless of your financial ability or anything like that, has nothing to do with it. But anyway, so we decided we'd try it. And so what we did was we got together with NAVDA, and they agreed to help us only from a just to get the word out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it got mentioned at NAVDA Test, and there was articles written in the magazine and things like that. So anyway, it kind of one thing led to another, and I think to date we've managed to place in the last 3 years, I think, almost 35 track chairs.
Wow.
In individuals across the United States. All of these people had various disabilities. It runs the full gamut. And a lot of them, there's a couple that are NAVDA members, active NAVDA members. And it's been a life-changing for these people. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to see this, see them get out in the field again. And I mean, it's just amazing. These people that write us letters and say, well, I went pheasant hunting in South Dakota. I hadn't been there. I thought I'd never go again.
Yeah.
And I think we get more out of it than they do, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm glad for you to get something out of it. You're doing an incredible job there. And if somebody wants to learn more about that in particular, how do they get more information from you?
They can actually, email me at Ugly Dog Hunting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I can, because we don't have a website per se.
Right.
We elected not to do that because we want to keep this simple. And so you can reach me at Terry at uglydoghunting.com, and I'd be more than happy to give them more information and give them applications. Our application period runs from January 1 to March 31st.
Well,
and
it's coming right up.
So the time is gratuitous. So,
yeah, it is. So start thinking about that if you know somebody who might be in need. That is Terry Wilson, the founder of UglyDogHunting.com. I'm Scott Linden. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. One of the many things you're doing out there, Terry, that I really admire, and keep up the good work on that. we really haven't talked about the state of the dog gear industry, but that is one of the premises for having you on the program today. So let's just take a look. I mean, we've had a pandemic. We've had a lot of people who have, it's gone both ways. A lot of people pulled in their horns and didn't do anything for a couple of years. I talked earlier in the podcast about finally we had our Untitled Chapter banquet last night, but other people have pulled out the stops and gone over the top participating in outdoor sports. What's the story in the dog gear and the wing shooting industry per se? What did you see happening on your level?
Well, I found that I was very concerned when the pandemic arrived, but I found that actually our sales increased.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
yep.
They were up like 20% both years. This year they're still up, although we're seeing a little flattening. One of the problems why we're seeing a little flattening right now is just supply chain issues.
Sure.
It's very difficult to get product, and the lead times are stretching out, and it's very frustrating because there's the dog training market and the hunting wing shooting market is strong. People are getting back out. I mean, and this is what we found. People went back. People bought puppies during the pandemic. They bought hunting dogs. Well, you buy a hunting dog, you need gear, and so it's been actually if there's anything the pandemic had a silver lining with the wing shooting industry, I think it was the sales were increased. But it's we find that it's very true, particularly in the market related directly to the dogs, the bumpers, retriever trainers, dog vests, collars, right down, everything you need to train your dog. We found the sales have been very strong there.
Yeah, I believe it. You just looked, if you're just an independent outside observer, you could make some pretty wild ass guesses and get to a lot of that. I ask every year on an extensive survey that I put out, what are you going to buy this year? And there's a long list. In fact, it's too long. I promise everybody who responds to that, I'll make it shorter this year. But what are the biggest, most popular categories for you at Ugly Dog Hunting?
Anything that's related to dog training.
Anything.
Anything that's related to dog training is very popular. And also, hunting. We do. We sell a lot of dog vests. For tummy savers to visibility vests, things like that. We even have believe it or not, we came out a few years ago with which is a snake-proof vest made out of turtle skin. And we sell a lot of those. So that's a very pricey item. But there are a lot of people that hunt out west that they're hunting with snakes. So, it's amazing product. And we helped Warwick Mills. We worked with them a little bit and sizing and things like that and a few items like that. So areas like that. And they obviously had the material. It's a great vest.
Oh, yeah.
It's not for everybody.
I imagine it's a little bit heavy duty and maybe a little warm at times, but
a little bit, but it's also a little pricey too for the average upland hunter. So.
Well, how about some of the stuff that's not quite as pricey? What are some of the newer, more exciting things you see coming down the pike that you're either getting in stock or hoping to get in stock if the supply chain cooperates?
Well, really the upland industry the dog training industry doesn't change that much from year to year.
Yeah.
There's just so many things you can do. I would say that, there's a lot of changes going on in the e-collar market, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been huge. A lot more and more people are going to the GPS units for tracking dogs and things like that. Mm-hmm. Which I'm from the old school. Incidentally, I don't do that, but I understand that there's a younger generation that has really been brought up on that, and that's what they like. So there's a lot of innovations that are coming out there, and quite honestly, it's difficult to keep track of it sometimes.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Yeah. Well, not even keep track of it. It's kind of hard to use them unless you really practice, but you're absolutely right. And I'm a big believer. So you can have your bells. I need a bell with a bell with about a 400-yard range, and that ain't going to happen. So,
no. So we've seen a lot of uptick in sales there.
Yeah.
In the e-collar market, and they're always very strong. And there's not really anything that's really new and novel coming out. I mean, there are a number of new hunting vests that are out there. We find that people now are going more to a hunting pack style type vest. That's what they prefer. And again, I'm saying that's, they're getting away from the old, I got my old wax cotton vest and, that's it. So now they want to carry water and have a pocket for their GPS and this, and that's fine. I think it's great because, you have a lot of these hunters will take off and they'll be gone for a day.
Yeah.
So, and that's, so we're seeing some changes there. But other than that, it doesn't change that dramatically, in my opinion.
What about, speaking of the old standbys, and, I'm a big believer in some of those novel or innovative solutions to some of the problems, including carrying a lot of water. But day in and day out, what are the things that you go back to, whether it's that old wax cotton vest or something else that you always carry with you when you're on a rough grouse or a woodcock hunt? What's on your short list?
Well, as crazy as it may seem, here's a couple of things that I would carry with me. I'm on a rough grouse hunt, and particularly, even if I know the area, number one, obviously, I always carry a basic first aid kit, and I carry a quick clot, which will stop arterial bleeding. I always carry a number of those packages, along with, believe it or not, a little honey, in case the dog became hypoglycemic. And last but not least, it's a very small unit. We don't sell them, but it's almost like pliers, and that is to free a dog from a conibear bear trap should it ever happen. Yeah.
Describe.
It's infrequent. Pardon me?
Go ahead. Describe what it is.
Well, it almost looks like it's probably about 12 inches long. It's got, if you envision pliers. Yeah. But it has two ends, and what you do is you have to be able to compress that spring on there and then flip the safety catch, which frees that gets at least half of the dog's neck out, or it could be a leg. What you don't want is a neck, because that's, that could be death within minutes. But it's rare that happens, but I always carry them, particularly in areas that I don't know. I don't know the area when I'm grouse hunting or woodcock hunting. Yep. It's to me, and it does happen, but it's rare, but boy, I'd rather have one of those with me. So it gets dragged along with everything else, the basic knife, and who knows what else I might stick in there. Sure. So I ended up, I figured I got to train with that thing. It weighs 15 more pounds.
We were having that debate a few nights ago about how much our vest weighs before we put a dang bird in it. It's too much, but, water's heavy. So,
well, of course, if water comes along. Unless you're in an area where you have a lot of water.
I've heard about those places. We've talked about the industry. We talked about some products. We talked about your passions in that world and other worlds that are, you're affecting very positively. If we could close it out with just one hunting tip, we're all trying to be better hunters out there, whether it's how you handle a dog or where you go or anything else. What's the one thing that bubbles to the top that you would want to tell everybody else who's trying to be a better bird hunter?
There's one thing is first and foremost, and I have to tell myself all the time, and I always forget, but you have to tell yourself all the time, the number one thing is trust your dog. And I always trust their nose. Scott, I can't tell you how many times I have been burned by saying, there is nothing there. There is nothing there. And sure enough, a grouse comes boiling out of there, or a woodcock comes up, and you're caught there flat-footed with your shotgun broken open or something like that. And that to me is the biggest thing. Trust your dog's nose.
Amen.
That will not let you down at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I've learned that the hard way myself any number of times. I'm a slow learner, but thank you for that. Thank you for helping us out here with information of all sorts. Terry Wilson is the proprietor of Ugly Dog Hunting Company. Learn more about them at uglydoghunting.com. They vet all this stuff. They know what they're talking about. If you can find it on his website, you can bet that they've tried it and endorse it. Terry, thanks again for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Great, Scott. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. And you all stick around. We've got a lot more, including your 2 cents worth on the question about how often and why you might shoot a limit of birds. You'll have to explain to me how that all works, because I haven't done that in a long time. But we'll also cover some other things in the way of events coming up. So stick around right after these 2 messages. The first, sageandbreaker.com. These guys are hardcore hunters over there, so that their stuff, like Terry's stuff, is all about tried and true. Sageandbreaker.com is all about gun cleaning and gun care gear, whether it's how you carry it, how you store it, how you clean it, or do any sort of gunsmithing. They've got tools, among other things, and a great inventory of videos so you can learn how to take care of your gun the right way. Very well produced and very informational. Everything from a bore cleaning kit to their spray-on CLP, even a new gun case for your shot. You got a good gun? You need a good gun case. All heirloom quality. Learn more at sageandbreaker.com. And more dogs ride in a RuffLand kennel than any other performance kennel. There's a reason for that. First off, hey, no assembly required. No nuts, bolts, or anything like that. You take it out of the box, put it in your truck, strap it down, and your dog is good to go, literally. RuffLandKennels.com, RUFF landkennels.com. Learn more about the new colors, all the accessories. I'm carrying the water already. I've got a storage tray as well. It's all available for your perusal at RuffLandKennels.com. Well, usually when I talk to this guy, we're both passing like ships in the night at the SHOT Show or Pheasant Fest or something like that. It's great to have the chance to discuss a little bit more detail about what he does and what they do over there. Carl Gunzer is the director of the sporting dog group at Nestle Purina Pet Care, i.e. Pro Plan, everybody. So if you have a question about that dog food or any of the other things they're doing over there, you've got the guy right here. So let's get started. Carl, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to visiting with you.
Same here, for a whole bunch of reasons. Since, actually, I saw you since you moved back to Colorado, so I'm glad you're settled in over there. But, beyond all that, let's start with some of your other background. You've got a varied and fascinating CV, as they say in England.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how to say that, so I'm glad we can abbreviate it. But, yeah, I've kind of been a little bit all over the country. For years I worked in the hunting and outdoor field, worked for the National Rifle Association, worked for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and then just got kind of head over heel over the dogs. And then I had my own retriever field trial training business for 20 some years, and was between Montana and Texas and all over the country competing in field trials. And then about 10 years ago, made the move to Purina and have been there since, kind of heading up Purina's support of sporting dog events, or supportive conservation organizations. Well, like we talked about, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, Rough Grouse Society, Ducks Unlimited, and kind of manage those partnerships and a lot of our outdoor media stuff.
Yeah, in fact, I've watched you develop over the years. I remember when you came on board at Purina, and it was very exciting for you. And of course, we're good friends with folks like Bob West over there and Steve Remspecker back in the day.
That's right.
All those guys are, they're all, almost fond memories anymore. I see Steve once in a while, but that's about it. And then Bob's still writing for the same magazines I write for most of the time. But
Bob's like the Energizer Bunny.
Oh God, he is.
Never quits.
I don't understand. I hope he must be like 112 years old by now. I think he invented dog food.
Careful, he may be listening.
So what got you into the bird dog world? I mean, I could tell my story, but tell me your story. Yeah. I mean, going from all those other things to bird dogs. Yeah.
Well, that was really, honestly, my first love. I grew up in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay, and was an avid waterfowler. We'd hunt were a few wild quail and of course doves and things like that there too. And just kind of grew up hunting and playing around with dogs. And I started messing around and training dogs when I was like 13 years old. My dad bought I don't know if you remember, if you're a baseball fan, Catfish Hunter was a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a litter of puppies, and we got a puppy from the baseball player, Catfish Hunter. And I was like 13, and my dad bought the puppy and then bought me the book, Hey Pup, Fetch It Up by Bill Tarrant. And I basically just read that book and trained the dog like so many people did with, the Richard Walters books. But for me, it was, Hey Pup, Fetch It Up. And that really started, kind of set the hook right then. Even through college, I always had a Labrador Retriever that I would train and play around with hunt tests. And then when I moved to Missoula with the Up Foundation, I just kind of landed with a bunch of field trialers out there that took me under their wing. And I found out that my dog was not field trial quality. So then, bought another dog, and, just like almost everybody else, right? You just get going down that rabbit hole, and pretty soon it's a free fall. And next thing you know, you've got, 10 dogs, and, so that's kind of how it started.
Well, yeah, I could. There is no 12-step program yet, Carl. I can guarantee you, but I'm looking for it, and I hope I never find it. It's interesting, Missoula. What the heck? But you're not the first person who said there's a really active retriever trial community out there. Why?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where it takes a village sort of to train a field trial retriever. You have to have the grounds, the people, the property, the clubs, the training, and Western Montana, especially north of Missoula, up in the Mission Valley, which is where I'm based out of. It's really conducive, training grounds. Lots of prairie pothole kind of stuff. I think, that the whole West there, so if you go over to Seattle area, there was obviously a big population base and a lot of trainers and events there. And it just kind of migrated across, and there would be a field trial in every, Boise, Pocatello, Salt Lake, Missoula, Billings, not Bozeman, Butte, and then right over to Spokane. So there's just kind of a little circuit up there in the Northwest that, you could pretty much run a field trial every weekend within a 6 to 8 hour drive. And
nice.
Yeah,
it's funny. I always look at, when I came here to Bend, Oregon, and latched onto the wire hair world, all of a sudden, all the folks I knew in that world were retired firefighters from the Bay Area of California. And so there are these migratory patterns of various sorts out there that for some reason just take place. And you were the beneficiary of one of those.
Absolutely. And the same thing happens in the South
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You go down to Boston, Georgia, or that area, there's a concentration of trainers. If you go down around, Giddings, Texas, there's a concentration of trainers. And then when I lived in Montana for a while, I worked for a guy down in Romaine. We would go down to the desert, kind of down there around Brawley, Calipatria, just on the Arizona border, and winter down there just to get away from the cold for a couple months.
I'll never forget Calipatria. I used to drive between there and L.A. a lot, and never ate a date on the way through there, which is apparently crazy. That's all they do is grow dates down there.
Yeah. That's not the most scenic part of the world in my book, but it has its own beauty. But
beauty is you're going somewhere more fun.
Right.
Well, tell me about your hunting these days. What are you doing now?
Well, honestly, it's the first time in my life that I actually don't own a Labrador Retriever. But I it's sort of like having a boat. The only thing better than having a boat is having a friend with a boat. That's kind of the way it is now. I've got a lot of friends that I still hunt with. Some of them people you just named, Keith Shop and Steve Rumsbecker and those guys that have great dogs. And so we still hunt together. And, Western Colorado, I've only been here a year. So I'm still kind of, finding my way around as far as the birds. But, there's healthy populations of waterfowl around Delta here. And then, a few quail and chukar I've found. I haven't hunted them yet, but I'm kind of, doing my Onyx thing here, and I've got a few X's on the map. I found some public land, and I've spotted a few birds. So I'll chase those this year, and then and now getting back into big game hunting a little bit. That I don't have quite so many dogs. I'm not opposed to chasing a deer or an elk too. Well,
I don't blame you, and you're in the right country for that as well. Over the years, you've been on whether it's with somebody who has incredible dogs like Steve Rumsbecker, who's got DKs that are world class, or anybody else. What have been some of the highlights of your hunting life?
Wow. So one of my favorite hunts I've ever been on, and I mentioned it to you, I think, the other day briefly, is not too far from you. I went with some folks from Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. I don't know if you know Brad. I don't know why I'm blanking on Brad's last name right now. He invited me to go out to Western Idaho and chase, California quail, pheasants, and chukar. And it was a quick hunt over there, just kind of south and west of Boise. And it was amazing. I mean, we got limits of quail pretty much every day. We shot a few pheasant, and we literally got 2 chukar. And the joke is, your first one's for fun, the rest are for revenge. And I kind of got my chukar. I got a picture with it, and it was like shooting an elk or something. We worked so hard that day. We got snowed on. They were telling me. They're like, it's not that cold out there. You don't need to worry and bring, a bunch of clothes. It was, I can't remember. It was probably in November, but.
Okay. Also, these guys are from Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. It was like 10 degrees and snowing and blowing and just, it was cold, but God, we just had an amazing hunt. And that was really probably one of my favorite bird hunts ever.
What was it about that? Because I've turned down that hunt twice and I'm regretting it. And
don't do it.
I know. Tell me why I need to say yes next time.
Well, it's, as with most hunting trips, the birds are part of it, but only part of it. The beauty of that country and the diversity to go from, farming to kind of that lowland scrub brush that holds all the quail, to river bottoms with pheasants in them, and then to the mountains would be the wrong word. They felt like mountains when we were climbing up, but the terrain that the chukar were in, those big sweeping sagebrush hills. I think that was what was so unique. It was the diversity of terrain and birds and habitat. And then of course the last thing is the people. We had a great time. So, that was a really fun trip.
That country is excellent. It's just the other side of the border from me, and
right.
I spend a lot of time on this side of that river that you were probably near.
Yeah.
but I do need to get over to the other side. In fact, I need to start reaching out on that. The guy I get most of my dogs from over the years is in that country, and hey, as many dogs as I bought and sold for him, he should be taking me out there.
Well, it's and we were there. I'm sure those populations probably boom a little bit and bust. I don't know. I did quite a bit of quail hunting in Texas, and they can be super cyclical there. We had those great years a few years ago with a lot of bad years in between where you just don't even hunt because you don't have really huntable populations, and then you blink and all of a sudden there's 25 covey days. But I don't know if it was always that way, but the quail numbers out there were tremendous. And those California quail are fun to hunt. They run until they don't run, and then they hold and come out under your feet. So it's kind of a fun a fun bird to hunt.
Oh, no, I agree. I mean, that's in fact, this season I'm starting my personal, finally, after so many years, study of valley quail. Done the same with chuckers and of course with sharp tails over the years, and this year valleys are my thing. So we're getting putting our X's on the map as well, and trying to get some places together that I haven't been to before, and do more of that. Hell, I got them in my backyard almost every day.
Right.
And I'll tell you, you can learn even those domestic, the home covey that you're not allowed to shoot. You could still learn a lot from them. And I really am. And it's fascinating. They talk a lot more than you think they do. And I'm lucky enough because I can get up close to them, not just there, but on the other side of the fence on federal land. They talk a lot, and they have a vocabulary that's a lot richer than I ever thought it was, because I can now get up close enough, within hearing distance, within earshot of these things. So
I'll bet they do. I think all these birds do. I've spent more and more time studying turkeys and being around turkeys, and they have so many different little, I don't know, variations to their little clucks and putts and purrs and all that stuff. It's really quite amazing, and I'm sure quail is even more so.
Yeah, so I'll let you know. I'll write that story in a couple of years for somebody. But in the meanwhile, I can understand why that Southwest Idaho hunt was so appealing to you. It's the country that I love. I write about it a lot. I get there whenever I can, which is a lot. And glad to hear that you enjoyed it. Thanks, and come back anytime, and make sure and bring your Visa card. Spend all your money in our part of the country.
Come to the Oregon side.
Yeah, please. Yeah. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. Carl Gunzer is my guest. He's the director of the sporting dog group for Nestle Purina, and we all know that as Pro Plan. Let's talk a little. Oh, I'm Scott Linden, by the way. I'm the host. Carl, let's talk a little bit about dog food, and if anybody knows you at all in this world, it's for that brand that I just mentioned, Pro Plan. But there's a lot more to Pro Plan than just that name, and then there's a lot more to Purina and sporting dogs than just dog food. So let's get into a couple of those things, but I'll start with a story. So I'm going to the Outdoor Writers Association convention many years ago because I was going to give a speech, and the guy next to me turns out to be somebody you know very well, and I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to this thing. I'm going to talk to Outdoor. I said, we got to talk, and he introduced the first I'll call it the power bar for dogs.
Oh, all right.
And so I went to that talk as well. Come on, what's his name? He's the veterinarian up in
Arlie
Alaska.
Reynolds.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So Arlie and Bob are up there giving that talk, and everybody's pretty stoked about it. For years I'd been hoping for something like this, and so I got up in the middle of that talk when it was question time, and I said, Arlie, Bob, most important question of all, what does it taste like? And they couldn't tell me.
Really?
I said, you haven't had any yet? But anyway, had some good fun with it. But again, and I know that's been, that thing is, ancient history, and other things have come along since. But tell us what's up in the world, Purina and sporting dog nutrition. Yeah.
Well, and I'll talk about that power bar for a second. That was that one was sort of a shame. It was,
yeah.
it never, it was co-manufactured. Purina doesn't have manufacturing to make that product. I think it was maybe ConAgra or another company, that makes, power bars for people or whatever. And the cost of that, getting that produced and making it just, it was too high. It couldn't, it just didn't work, right?
Yeah.
Enough sales to make it worth, us building equipment to do it or continuing the product. But it really was a great product. It's basically a glycogen replacement. And I'm sure there's probably a few other products on the market now that, have taken a little of that space. But, new stuff, it's a huge continuation of science. There's always something new that we're learning about. And a lot of it, bridges over from human medicine. I think that's one of the great things about Purina being associated with Nestle is we kind of get the benefit of innovations in human food, human nutrition, and vice versa. I think right now probably one of the biggest frontiers everyone is talking about is probiotics.
Yeah.
And adding probiotics to the formulas. For years, it was impossible to do so because basically, the live bacteria would get cooked in the process of making the food, and they had to kind of figure out how to microencapsulate it so it could live and, put it on at the end. And but now the technology is there. So, that's been probably one of the biggest new things in the last 10 years is different probiotics and what they do. And even some of these probiotics that have a calming effect for dogs. We have a product called Common Care, which does reduce anxiety in dogs through a probiotic. So instead of a drug, it can really help dogs through it's called a vagal nerve, but there's a nerve from the gut to the brain, and you can affect how people think. Just probably like if everyone says, well, how does what you eat affect your brain? And I said, well, did you ever give your, kids caffeine and sugar or whatever? So, you can affect the brain through what's in your stomach. So, that's probably one of the newest things, I think probably everyone has seen, the industry, because of COVID, sort of post-COVID, there was a huge explosion of dogs, and so the industry in general has really been struggling to meet demand over the last couple of years, not just Purina, but really all the major manufacturing brands. We have two pet food factories under construction right now, one in Ohio and one in Georgia. And we hadn't built a new manufacturing facility in probably 20 years, and now we have two of them.
Wow.
We have 12 dry plants throughout the country right now, and so we're adding. So you've seen shelves that were half empty, and of course all the supply chain issues hits the dog food companies just as it does any manufacturing. So it's been challenging, and the costs have been rising lately. Hopefully that's stabilizing a little bit, but it's been good for business, but a difficult environment to operate in, with costs and transportation and supply chain things.
Well, you mentioned supply chain, and we don't need to belabor that point, but one fascinating aspect of that, and tell me, just give me a reality check. Everybody I know in the cattle business is getting rid of their cows. Does that help you guys?
We probably use, I would imagine, probably less beef protein than other sources, but we do use it, and especially in the fat side. So, beef fat is usually the best fat. It's I'm not a nutritionist, but I can tell you it's probably the most stable of the fats, more so than pork or chicken or any of that. And we use a lot of that. So yes, it affects all of the protein costs have been rising. Here's a little known fact. Like 70%, 60 or 70% of the world's sunflower oil is produced in Russia and Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
We use a lot of sunflower oil in our formulas. Now, we buy most of it here, but it's a worldwide commodity, as are most commodities. So, so all of that gets affected. And, you know, at one point we're wondering if we're going to have to start reformulating some different formulas, because, you know, we may not be able to get sunflower oil in next year. Yeah. But fortunately, we've got enough contracted. I think we're in good shape. But it's just, you know, things that you never think of just seems all of a sudden how it's all related, you know?
Yeah, you know, I had a discussion just a few nights ago with somebody about what are you paying for dog food these days, and I was flabbergasted to find out what it costs now. They just take it out of my credit card, so I don't even know anymore. I'm probably better off that way.
Most people will say, "Oh, my wife buys it." So,
what you guys are doing some things in the, I'll call it broadly, the supplement field, whether it's Fortiflora or anything else. What else are you doing in that world? And then we're going to talk about how to use all this stuff.
Yeah, top secret. Can't tell you. No.
Don't kill me afterwards.
Yeah, Fortiflora is an amazing product. I mean, it's probably the most prescribed probiotic in the industry, and it just has amazing results for helping with digestive upset, replenishing healthy gut bacteria. I would say that's really our biggest right now. We are working on a few new supplements, but I think they're all kind of in the veterinary side. There's things to help with hydration, and keeping cats hydrated is a big deal, you know. And so there's and I'm not a cat person, so I can't give you a lot of details on it, but you know, there's products to try and help keep cats hydrated. Say that 3 times fast. So the one of the great things about the Fortiflora, what I use it the most, is when I'm traveling, because it tastes good. And so, you know, you can mix it in with a little warm water and a bowl of food, because sometimes some of these dogs, you know, they get on the road, and, you know, with the change of everything, they're stressed and they don't eat as well, and then they get digestive upset. So I think it's a great product to use kind of on the road to get dogs.
Yeah, I remember the first time somebody, probably Bob West, now that I think about it, said, you know, because my current dog is the worst of the finicky feeders on the road, especially, particularly after a hunt. And he said, well, try that. And I said, what, you know, it's just bacteria. No, it tastes great.
Yeah. Well, it's
again, he didn't tell me he tasted it, but so it's good for that too, right?
Yes. Yep.
But the right way to use it is not just the night after your last hunt. It's pre-hunt, isn't it? Pre-road trip.
Absolutely right. Yes. Yeah. And that's the real important thing. And really one of the best uses is, you know, if a dog's been on a course of antibiotics or something like that. Yeah. You know, just kind of like we would take yogurt, but yogurt's really not the appropriate bacteria for the dog's digestive system, like, you know, Fortiflora. So that's a great use. You know, you probably know Clyde Vetter.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Sharpshooter Kennels, short hairs. You know, he was the first one that said something to me about, he puts all of his bitches on it when they're bred, when they have their puppies, and especially during kind of that whelping time, you know, where the mother's cleaning up after all. Oh, gosh,
yeah.
He said he saw a real difference by putting those females on Fortiflora and helping to not have them, you know, just keep them, you know, they're heavily stressed, especially if they have a big litter and they're eating a lot and they're, you know, feeding the puppies and then cleaning up after them. It's heck on their systems. And he claims it really helps them to, you know, rebound after having the litter, and keeps them healthy during the litter.
You know, that is a great tip, and I love that idea. So, not that I'm going to be breeding any dogs anytime soon, but anybody who else, you think about all of that. And then the other, you know, a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I'm a pretty forward-thinking guy. I'm going to give my dog yogurt." But you're saying that bacteria is not the right bacteria for a dog.
Yeah, I can't tell you 100% that it's, you know, I don't know that it's wrong or bad for them, but I don't think it's beneficial.
Yeah.
Like we would think, you know. I just don't know that it's not the same, you know, whatever it is, SF68, blah blah blah, long
name.
Yeah. that is in Fortiflora or other things that are proven to be helpful. And I'm sure there's different bacteria in different yogurts and stuff like that. So.
All right. So here's the one that you guys have probably answered 1,000 times, but you Carl Gunzer of Purina has never told Scott Linden about this. What's the current thinking on corn?
So corn. Well, let me start with this thought, is that it's really the nutrients that are important in a diet as opposed to just ingredients.
Yeah.
So let's talk about protein for a second. You could get protein from, beef, pork, chicken, whatever. You could get, fat from any of those sources, and you could get carbohydrates from, corn, rice, all these different areas. So when they're formulating a diet, they try to get all of these things, protein, carbohydrates, fats in the proper quantities and qualities, and then look at all of the, macro ingredients, the nutrients, things like lysine and other things that are important in a diet, and you get those from different ingredients. So corn has a lot of great nutrients in it. Now, would corn in and of itself be a complete and balanced diet? Absolutely not. But, when you need some of these different ingredients and elements in a diet, corn provides some of those. So I think corn, the germ, that little part in the middle is like 60% protein. Now that's it's a vegetable protein, not an animal protein, but it's still a protein. So there's nothing wrong with corn in a diet. We use it in most all of our diets in different degrees and quantities. We have a few without corn, wheat, or soy for dogs that might be sensitive, but the truth is dogs are much more likely to be sensitive to a protein like chicken, beef, lamb, than they are to corn, wheat, soy, or those things. But it can happen. But again, I think the real important thing is, having a complete and balanced diet that's proven to have all the nutrients and everything that the dog needs. So
good. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Carl Gunzer is the director of the Sporting Dog Group for Nestle Purina Pet Care. That's the Pro Plan folks. Let's just set the record straight on protein and fat content for a performance dog. What do you think the minimum should be, and should we be feeding that all year?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like all things, I would say it probably varies a little bit depending on the dog's metabolism, their age, their activity level, all of that. With that said, there are some real benefits to like a 30% protein, 20% fat diet. Dogs operate very efficiently on a high fat diet. They burn fat. Everybody used to think, oh, my dog's going to run, quote, hot on a high fat diet. Actually, they run cooler on a higher fat diet than they do on a high carbohydrate diet. Dogs digest fats easier, and they do it better than they do carbohydrates, which creates that insulin spike. So they it has that insulin spike and then it goes down. So the carbs are kind of the quick burst of energy, but they're not the long-term energy. So if you're going to run your dog all day, you might think of it as the carbs are gone in half an hour, but they're running off fat for the next 4 hours type thing. So most dogs do best on like a higher protein, higher fat diet. The higher protein helps build lean muscles and helps with oxygen metabolism in the muscles. So the dog is more efficient, their lungs and everything else. So really, I think that's generally the best diet. Now, if a dog, is not very active, doesn't run, it's not running, that hard, or just has a low metabolism, and you get to where you can only feed them a couple cups of food because, it's got a lot of fat and protein, well, then maybe a 26-16 type ratio would be better. But I don't ever really like going much below that, especially in protein, because there's a lot of research that shows higher levels of protein lead to fewer injuries, muscle things. Who you just mentioned, Arlie Reynolds, did a study, and it had dogs on like a a 24% protein diet, a 26, and then a 30, and maybe a 21%. It had dogs on different protein level diets. And it was amazing the difference when they tracked injuries, like, either torn muscles or ligaments or things. The dogs on the higher protein diets had dramatically fewer performance injuries than the dogs on the low protein diets.
Fascinating.
So there's some real research that proves the benefit of protein.
Can I just say this about research? Whenever we look for information when it comes to dog nutrition, you guys need a blue ribbon for that, because you're doing more of that than everybody else put together. Thank you on behalf of every performance dog owner for doing the heavy lifting in the areas that are important to us when it comes to nutrition. So keep up the good work over there at Checkerboard Square or wherever you do it these days. You have a pretty cool facility somewhere out there.
Practicing it.
Yeah. For a while there, I don't know, you still have kind of I don't know what to call it, a campus with, there was arenas and maybe some hunting ground and everything else out there somewhere in the St. Louis Metroplex. Wasn't that something that you guys did?
Yeah. So there's two things we have. So right in downtown St. Louis, they do call it a campus, and it would feel that way. There's there's kind of one bigger office tower, but then there is our pilot plant where we don't make food for sale there, but that's where we do our testing of different, as we develop products, is all done right there in downtown St. Louis. There's a couple additional buildings. I think Purina has over 8,000 employees now throughout throughout North America. And but then out in Gray Summit, Missouri, we have the event center. And so out there is kind of an event center where we hold different, dog shows, different competitions and events. There's a herding field, there's herding competitions, and then there's a kind of a visitor center there for people and kids. We have a lot of, families come through there and meet the dogs, and we have other animals out there for people to engage with. It's kind of an educational facility, and I think that's about 300 acres out there at that. Yeah. That property was shared with, Purina Mills. They kind of are across the border. I think, there's always a lot of confusion, and I don't remember the exact timing. I would say maybe it was early 80s where the business split, and, at that time, Ralston Purina.
Oh, yeah.
All the, dog and cat food products, and Purina Mills, PMI, took all the horse, cattle, livestock feeds. And it seemed a little weird for the company to split, but it actually makes a little bit of sense. They're very different distribution channels. So, all the farm and feed stuff goes through, kind of that channel. And most of the pet foods go through, the grocery mass pet specialty channel. So
I never knew that.
The business sort of split based on where it was sold.
Well, I'm supporting both sides of that deal because I'm buying, pigeon checkers and things like that, and anybody else. Hell, you make goat chow and trout chow and who knows what else out there at the Mills side of things.
That's right.
Fascinating stuff. And, just let's conclude this part of our discussion about the industry itself on where you think it's going next. I mean, you look at this, and whether it's supply chain or new ingredients or even distribution to the consumer, where do you think, will there be any big changes in the industry in the next couple of years that we should watch out for or be aware of?
I'll tell you, there's been I'll start with a little bit of history. So in, 10 or 15 years ago, Scott, there was probably, a dozen or 20 different companies making dog food. The barrier to entry, was distribution. It's like, hey, how do you get this product? And now I got to go fight with, Mars and Purina to try and get a little bit of shelf at the grocery store or at the feed store. So there was a huge barrier to entry. Well, the internet and direct to consumer DTC has changed all that. So where I would say, we used to have, a dozen brands, that were sort of competing in the space. Now there's literally hundreds of brands. Yep. The barrier to entry has gone down. There are a lot of manufacturing facilities that will manufacture, hey, if you want to write up a recipe, Scott, you could start your own dog food tomorrow. You could get it produced somewhere and distributed, and not trying to give you an idea. I'm just
no, because mine would be pizza or macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. But so the barrier to entry has really changed. So I think that's been the biggest change is the distribution channels and the number of competitors. And I would say that will continue to change. Purina is kind of, because it's a large company, our distribution goes all through, Purina doesn't sell direct. How about that?
Yeah.
So you can't, just like you can't call, Coca-Cola and say, hey, can I get a case of Coke from Coca-Cola? Coke is going to say, well, you go to one of the stores that sells our products, Well, Purina is the same way. We don't sell direct to consumer. But the way the world is changing, who knows what the future is on that. So we'll see. I think that's probably, the big change is in the way products are distributed. Amazon and all this online retail stuff has certainly changed all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching that happen really early on in some other industries, the fly fishing business for one. I remember walking into a shop one day and Doc, and I said, "How you doing?" He says, "I'm very, very busy." I said, "There's no one here." He says, we got 4 guys in the back filling online orders." I said, "On what?"
Right.
And now everybody's doing it. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, you can never say never in that world, because at some point it would pencil out. And
right.
And the trade-off becomes, again, I've seen it in other industries. The trade-off is, okay, do we piss off our retailers?
Yeah. No, and that's right. So that's all, I guess, who knows, and time will tell what happens and all that. But the retailers are an important part. And I think I'm a firm believer in the theory, you do best what you do most. And I whether it's dogs or manufacturing, and what Purina does best is make great dog food, and I think we can let other people do the sales of it. But
there you go.
Those companies will do the online stuff for us. But I think that's probably, you asked about sort of changes, and I think that's the biggest thing I've seen changing. Another thing is right now, basically we make a product and you can choose from, God knows there's enough different formulas, but that, there's a little bit of playing around with designed formulas that, that you could say, hey, I want 32% protein and, 19% fat, and I want this in my dog food, and I don't like that in my dog food. I don't like it, so I don't think my dog likes it. And they can be made. It's kind of different, but there's a few companies playing with that. Purina's doing some work with that. I believe the product's called Just Right.
Great name.
You can basically order your own dog food, online. So
I love it.
Yeah. So that's there's lots of, just wait. Everything changes,
Yeah, the more things stay the same, they change.
That's right.
Well, you said do best, and what we want to do here at the Upland Nation podcast better is take care of our dogs in the field and in the kennel. When you're hunting, getting ready for a hunt, getting your dogs ready for a hunt, or in the field that day, what are some things that you do for your dogs that we probably don't, but should benefit from?
So I'm not a big proponent of feeding the day of the hunt. So if we're going hunting, I wouldn't feed them in the morning. If I did want to feed, if I had a dog that was a really hard keeper and I didn't feel comfortable giving him, a lot of food in one meal a day, I would try and feed him, at least a few hours before. I would work them. They just kind of like everybody says, don't go swimming with a full stomach. Well, don't go hunting with a full stomach if you're a dog. So I wouldn't feed the dog. I think hydration is always probably the most important thing that often gets overlooked. It's pretty easy to not think about that, and the dogs aren't thinking about it. You sort of got to force them to drink half the time. If they're out there working, especially upland hunting, they come by, you offer them the water bottle, and they look at it and go, nah, I think I'd rather go hunt. Well, I think it's a smart move to say, no, come back here. We're going to sit here for a minute and you're going to have a drink. And then you can go and kind of train them to stay hydrated.
You ever bait your water for that? I've tried all sorts of stuff and it doesn't seem to work for me. Maybe I need your advice. What should I put in my dog's water?
That's a great segue. I'd try a little Fortiflora.
Yeah.
They usually say low sodium chicken broth.
Yeah, but ain't working for us.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'll try that. I love that idea, and I'm the same way. I have the same, and I hunt in the desert most of the time.
Yeah,
you think the dog would figure it out?
That's right.
Yeah.
The best piece of advice I think I learned from Tom Dock and quite a while ago, or maybe he was the first person I heard say it. But
yeah, he doesn't have an original idea in his head. Don't tell him I said that. No, hey Tom, I love you. I love you. Thanks for letting me crash your birthday party a few years ago.
Tom always says when you go hunting, the last thing you take out of the car should be your dog.
Yeah.
And when you're done hunting, the first thing you put up should be your dog. And that's really good advice, because I see it so often. People pull up to that parking area and, the dogs are excited. So people let them out and their dogs are running around and, you're getting your clothes and your gun and your shells and making sure you got everything you want. And meanwhile, your dog is off, eating a chicken bone, or worse yet, running across the highway or whatever. Yeah. So, don't let that dog out until it's time to walk away from that truck and go chase birds. Same thing when you're done, when you get back. If the dog's too hot, tie him up there for a minute. Just don't let him, because by the fact that you drove to wherever you're hunting, that means you're in an area that cars come by, and it's, far more dogs are hurt a field that way than I think anything else. So that's probably the best piece of advice I try to share.
Yeah, and Tom, thanks for reminding all of us about that, and Carl, thanks for reminding us about what Tom reminded you about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And can I just amplify on this again? Thank you for doing so much of the research in this world, but I lost a dog to stomach twist many years ago, not because I fed the day of a hunt, but just a sheer freak accident. But that's one of the risks when you feed the morning of a hunt. But there are some much more valuable selfish reasons not to feed. Tell us a little bit about how it affects a dog's performance in the field when they have a full GI tract.
Yeah, sure. So, one is obviously just they're carrying that extra weight around, sloshing their stomach. But also, physically, digestion causes heat. Just like you warm yourself up by eating something. Well, the dog starts the digestive processes. Two things happen. One is it's building heat in the dog in order to digest the food. And the other is it's taking blood and sending blood, to the stomach and the GI tract to do the digestion. Well, that's blood that's not, circulating and carrying oxygen to muscles and that. So really, and then what tends to happen is that then causes diarrhea. So not only did they not get any benefit of the food that you put in their stomach, now you've actually hurt the process, because you get a dog with diarrhea, and if that becomes, more severe colitis, then they're not digesting anything. They're getting an inflamed GI, and now you're fighting diarrhea for a couple of days, so you're going the wrong way. So, the way to think of it really is that that food doesn't do your dog any good until it's, completely broken down, it's in the muscles, and it is available for use. And that takes, up to 24 hours.
Yeah.
That be converted, you know what I mean? It's broken down, and by having food in the stomach, it's not doing that dog any good at all. And just like, the mushers, the sled dog guys, and that's what Arlie, I guess was, he's not competing anymore, but, the mushers, they would try and feed 24 hours before the start of the race, and then nothing. So they want a completely empty stomach when that race, not only empty stomach, but a whole
whole GI tract.
The whole GI tract is clean. Obviously, they're just carrying less mass. Everything is digested, and it's available to be burned, as opposed to bounce around in the gut.
Well, it's been 125 episodes, and finally the word diarrhea came up.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we'll turn you loose. We'll do this again. This has been so much fun. Carl Gunzer, he is the director of the sporting dog group for Nestle Purina Pet Care, the Pro Plan folks, Fortiflora folks. Thanks for all those tips, by the way. This is golden. This kind of discussion just helps everybody in one or 100 ways. Carl, thank you so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. Have a great day.
Thanks, Scott. I sure enjoyed it. Let's do this in the field someday.
I'll send you an email on that. I got an idea. All right. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
And everybody else, we still got a little bit more. Thanks for sticking with us here on the Upland Nation podcast. Your 2 cents worth. How often do you shoot a limit? I'm going to share some of your thoughts on that from our social media pages. And in the meanwhile, let's cover a little bit of commercial ground here. First, we're brought to you in part by legacysports.com/pointer. Yeah, that's their shotgun brand. And you know, we took a lesson over at Mid-Valley Clays a while back, and my buddy Tom was shooting one of his semi-autos. And Legacy Sports has a whole bunch of semi-automatic guns, all gas-operated, some with Cerakote finishes if you like. They've got a traditional walnut stock for those of you who like that, or you can even get yourself a black synthetic stock in 12 or 20 gauge. Learn more about all the varieties of shotguns at legacysports.com/pointer. Yeah, they're a work of art at a price that's a thing of beauty. And then one more time, let me just remind you, if you want to learn more about this, what a great cause. My friends at Pheasant Bonanza out in Takema, Nebraska, are putting on an event to raise funds for KAMO. That is Canine Adoption and Mentoring Outdoors. And they're doing a few other benefits groups as well out there. The deadline to sign up for that event, which is called the Burt County Bird Bounty. Deadline is October 1st. So get in on that. Learn more about what it's all about and what you get for that fundraiser. It's a 3-day affair. You're going to shoot waterfowl. You're going to shoot upland. You're going to shoot sporting clays. There's social events. Lodging is included. If you're a gambler, there's a Calcutta. Learn more at KAMOINC.org/bird-bounty. KAMOinc.org. Good luck, and let's go to the Facebook pages. Where I asked, and thank you all. Great responses, always great responses. I ask questions on the social media pages about things that interest me, intrigue me, perplex me, and you always have great answers there. Let's just take a look at a few of those. The question again, how often do you actually shoot a limit? And some incredible stuff. Eric Kopang says, when I'm on a trip out of state and I went there to hunt all day, it's relatively easy to shoot a limit. Eric, you're a better shooter than me, I guess. Especially when all the grouse are included in the total. But generally, I'm satisfied with a good walk and watching my dog show off her skills. Yeah. Well, you got it right. And I think everybody on this podcast would agree. Joel Witt, much the same. He hardly ever shoots a limit. Doesn't matter. For me, it's all about the dogs. John Hyde, maybe he'll shoot one soon. It's been a while, he says, since he shot a limit of pheasants. It's about great dog work and hard-won harvest. Man, I ought to write that down. Hard-won harvest. That ought to be a bumper sticker for all of us who really care about the dog work. Robert Murphy, it all depends on how many birds I want to clean. I remember shooting a bunch of snow geese many, many years ago and then finding out later that we had to pluck them all. Hard to do when your fingers are numb. Yvonne Shire, I think that's how I'm going to pronounce it. When I was younger, the more birds was the better, but now with age, the pleasure of seeing the dog working is more important. I've had this discussion before. Maybe you have too. You know, the best analogy is the one I use a lot in fly fishing. You know, when you first learn to fly fish, you want to catch a fish, any fish, it doesn't matter. Then you want to catch a lot of fish. Then you want to catch a big fish. then doesn't matter anymore. That's not why I'm there. You feel that way? A lot of you do, apparently. Mike Jonas shoots a limit of pheasants about 50% of the time. Quail, well, he says you can't even remember that. Seeing the birds, watching the dog work, retrieving every bird that does go down makes for a great day. Mike, couldn't have said it better. Thank you all for your responses. We'll revisit that down the road. I'm sure we will. Thank you again. All right. So let me just remind you one more time, because we're getting a lot of interest and we're getting down to the wire on some aspects of it. FurFeathersFriends.com. Learn more about our little event. It's a big event and it's a little event. It's nationwide, in that I want you to show off your dog to somebody who you haven't hunted with before. Spouse, child, friend, next door neighbor. Show off your dog. He's the vehicle for bringing a newcomer into our sport. Learn all about that and the chance to join us in Huron, South Dakota, if you like, at FurFeathersFriends.com. All the details there, including a lineup of what we're going to be doing when we are in Huron. A few social events here and there, but mainly just go out and hunt public ground and come back and trade notes and brag about our dogs. And the rest of you can brag about your shooting and make fun of my shooting as well. FurFeathersFriends.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Terry Wilson of Ugly Dog Hunting Company and Carl Gunzer of Nestle Purina Pet Care, the Pro Plan folks, for being guests on the show today. We learned a lot from both of you. Thanks to all of you who comment at social media platforms. Those who left ratings and reviews, you get an extra box of ammo in your Christmas stocking this year. We're all made possible by RuffLand Performance Kennels, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Ringneck Nation of Huron, South Dakota, and FurFeathersFriends.com. Thanks again for listening. Until I see you in the field, I'll see you at the shooting range. I'm Scott Linden.